We're here at the murder site of Deana Bowdoin in Sin City, Tempe, Arizona, next to Arizona State University. For this episode, we'll be sitting down with Leslie James, Deana Bowdoin's sister, to discuss victims' rights and more details on this crime. Please help me welcome Leslie. Hey, Leslie.
Hey, thank you for having me.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. Leslie, tell us about the case with your sister, Deana Bowdoin.
Okay. It was 48 years ago. This was January 7th of 1978. Deana was a senior at Arizona State University. She had about 8 hours left to graduate. She was found by her boyfriend in her apartment in Tempe. She had been out to dinner with her parents, my parents, and then gone to a bar with a friend of hers, went back to her apartment, and about 45 minutes or so later, her boyfriend got there and found her. She had been strangled, stabbed, and some element of having been hit. This was in 1978 when the cities of Tempe and Phoenix and Scottsdale were all pretty small. Not a lot of crimes like this happened. And in fact, this case made the above the fold of the Arizona Republic after it happened. So that's basically when it happened and where it happened.
Must have been a terrible experience for your whole family and for you, especially being her sister.
Absolutely. I was about 20 months older than her. And at the time, I was living in an apartment in downtown Phoenix. And when the police got the call, they called my parents and told them over the phone. And they told them that they were afraid that the radio was going to put the information out. So not even having an ability to visit my parents and tell them that their only other daughter had been murdered was quite shocking.
This case and this experience has turned you into a crime advocate or a victim's advocate from being a victim yourself.
It has. I kind of not by choice, but I've kind of fallen into it. With my career path, I had the ability to be able to be part of this entire process for, I'd say, the last 48 years. And as part of that, I just have thought to myself many times, do I want to continue to live in this world? Because it's sad. But I've found that being able to talk to people and share what they may be going through, what they have to look forward to or not look forward to, I've found it brings me some peace. And I hope that it helps other people who are going through this process like we do.
Leslie, how did you develop the perseverance to continue on with this case and follow it all the way through?
Well, I've thought about that too. And I think to start, I wanted to protect my parents. And, early on when crimes aren't solved immediately, you just kind of wonder, are they ever going to be solved? And so, I maybe I was a little rude in working with the Tempe Police Department at the time, but I wanted to protect my mom. And so I told the Tempe Police, obviously they're my parents, they're Deana's parents, but I want you to talk to me. And I want you to, unless there is something important, I don't want you contacting them because it's going to be too painful. So unless and until you have someone that you're going to be arresting, just leave them alone.
So you just stayed the point of contact
Right.
and kept your parents out of the line of fire.
Right.
Will you tell us about the particular circumstances with the DNA in this case?
Yeah, I will. Back in 1978, as I said, she was raped. I don't know if I said that in the beginning, but she was raped and strangled and stabbed. So you think about from an evidence standpoint, what kind of evidence did Tempe police have? Well, they had all of her clothing. They had the belt that he used to strangle her. It was one of those macrame, kind of fabric-y belts. Um, they did not find a knife, to my knowledge, and so they had a bit of limited physical evidence. But when I cleaned out that apartment, they had graphite all over the apartment, obviously looking for fingerprints. So that's a whole other story. But back then, DNA was not what it is now. So this happened in 1978, and in about 1998, Tempe police, they had a cold case detective that dogged this case. This case really affected him. He had 2 daughters, and I think personally he wanted this solved. And he kept on and insisted that the evidence be rerun. And at about 1998, we learned that Deana's boyfriend was excluded. Now, for 20 years, everyone except my mother thought that her boyfriend committed this crime. He didn't.
Incredible.
And so a couple of years later, DNA technology just kept advancing. There's a DPS crime lab ran the evidence again, and they got 3 matches. They matched to a DNA sample that was in the CODIS database of a person that had been in Florence prison since 1985. So they had their match, and in the year 2000, they got an indictment finally. So from 1978 until 2000.
Really wild that it took that long, but it was all really due to the DNA process and the DNA technology improving.
Absolutely. And I believe that without DNA, this case never would have been solved, because he certainly was not going to admit to it.
It wasn't going to tell you what happened.
No, absolutely not. He never showed any remorse, period.
Are there additional key dates or events that tie into this case?
Yeah, there are. So this was January 7th, 1978. In September of 1978, this defendant was arrested for an aggravated assault, also down around what they called Sin City, around the apartments around Tempe, ASU. And he was sentenced to 7 years in Florence. In March of 1985, he got out from that sentence. He went up to NAU, where his brother was going to college. 3 years later, he raped a woman up there out in the forest who was an NAU student. And in January of 1986, he was sentenced to 7 life counts for that horrendous event. So he went back to prison. So those are very key dates. Now, 2000, the indictment. 7 years it took us to get to trial. 7 years of pre-trial processes, antics, stalling. We went to trial in January of 2007. In November of 2007. And on January 24th, 2008, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to the death penalty. So that was January 24th of 2008. The appeals process took 14 years.
Unbelievable. After he was convicted, over 14 years
14 years of appeals. And that was fast compared to some of the people that are on death row now.
And I'm told you went to all of the hearings.
Every hearing.
Didn't miss one.
And I think I counted, I think there were 17 different judges through the process. And, after you get out of the superior court process and go into Court of Appeals, it's all paper and attorneys. But I virtually attended every hearing in this case, including an appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court in San Francisco. And I went with the Attorney General's person, Miles Braccio, who argued before the Ninth Circuit. He argued this appeal. This was his first argument. And we've since become close friends. And the Ninth Circuit upheld the conviction.
I find it really fascinating that you've stayed friends with the detective and some of the prosecutors in your case.
Yeah, it's kind of the bond that keeps on giving, but it's nice now because we do keep in touch, not daily or anything, but we talk about our lives. We don't have to talk about the case anymore. It's finally done.
That's beautiful. You're friends now.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
become friends. Do you want to opinionate a little bit about the police, the media, the court system, the judicial system?
Yes, I do. And apologies a little bit to the police, but back in 1978, I have to wonder when you get a call at 1 o'clock in the morning from a boyfriend, you go find a girl that's dead. Is it really going to be that the radio is going to put that information out on the media? I don't know, because back then, like I said, these types of cases were not very common compared to the violence that we see now. So, in retrospect, I wish the police had been able to be there in person and not tell my parents over the phone, because that's how my dad told me. He called me and I was getting ready to go into work on a weekend, which after that I cut that out. It's just one of those. And he told me, and he said, "We've lost Deana." And my first thought was, car accident? That's your first thought. And I asked him, I said, "What happened?" And he said, "No, why don't you come over?" And I kind of yelled at him and I said, "No, you tell me now." And he told me.
Must have been a terrible experience.
Well, it was. And so that was their first experience, and really my first experience with the police. They were compassionate, but again, in those days, for years, the family. I don't know if it's good or bad. I can go both ways. How much information does a family need to know about a case? How much do they want to know? And I've learned in meeting victims, everyone is different. Some people do not want to know anything. They just want to be away from it. Other people, like me, I'm one of those, I got to know everything. And then I'll figure out what I want to retain and what I don't. So I would think, grading the police on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give them, over the years, probably about a 6 in the beginning. But then that particular cold case detective, without his perseverance, I'm not sure the DNA would have been retested.
The case would still be
The
open.
case would still be open.
You mentioned to me that you purposely stayed away from the media and stayed away from commenting to the media. And why was that?
In the early days, social media was not anything back in 1978. And to have people show up at your parents' house and knock on the door and say, "Come out and talk to us," that just hit me wrong. So in the early days, it was more of a I don't want to do this because I don't know how you're going to convey us. I don't know how you're going to use us. The later time, as once the indictment, I was basically afraid that whatever I may say could get used in the case. It may have been an unfounded fear, but I did not want anything messing up the appeals or the trial process or anything because of something we said to the media.
Now, this case has been all over the media and all the news outlets. How have you reacted to the media since the conviction?
Uh, I was told by an Arizona Republic writer just before the trial started that at the time, I believe this was the oldest case that had gone to Superior Court for prosecution. And I was told that the case would be blackballed, that the media would have no interest in it. And basically, that's what we saw. We went to trial every day. Other than the Arizona State University state press kids, they came because Deana was an ASU student. But the media didn't want any part of it. And that was fine with me. Again, because I was worried that with media coverage, it could taint things. Once the sentence and once the appeal process started, There was nothing. So basically for 14 years. Then it started up again just when the warrant of execution was issued. And this was the first execution that the state had done in 8 years. So there was a lot of media coverage and about the method of execution and about the effects of an execution on the person being executed. There was a lot of coverage. And there was a lot of political coverage too, because this was during a time when I think at the time it was the governor had retained a retired judge to look at the protocol and to look at the death penalty process. So that was kind of going on as well. I was interviewed for that report, Judge Duncan, during the process that he undertook to look at death penalty in Arizona. And I saw that for the most part, media wanted information that they can sensationalize. That's the nature of media.
Yes.
Of course. I would much rather see something that would draw my attention. And so this was prime for that. And I just thought I was still worried if I said anything, it's going to get out. So my first formal conversation with the media was my statement immediately after the execution.
You felt it best that your process that you undertook was the best way to go.
For me, it was. Yeah.
We've kind of skipped over the victim, your sister Deana.
Yeah.
Will you describe her to us a little bit?
Yeah. I said she was 21. We were 20 months apart. She was, I'm going to say she wasn't a genius, but she was one of the hardest working students I'd ever been around. I was kind of lazy. She had a thing for languages. And so in her short 21 years, she spent a summer in Mexico with a family. She spent a summer in Valencia with another student in Spain. She lived with my parents in Europe for 2 years and kept up all of her studies. Basically had friends all over the world. And
sounds very dynamic. I know you have a poem that you discovered. You didn't know she was a poet.
No, we didn't. And the Tempe police gave us a Xerox copy of a poetry notebook.
Now you're dating yourself by using that word.
Yes, I am. But it was a notebook, and the front page of it in handwriting says, "Original poetry, continued." I never knew what was the first, right? But I have a copy of all of that poetry. So if I could, I'd like to read one of the poems that describes her.
Please do so.
Okay. And this poem we used on the inside of her funeral program because it's just so fitting. Prolonged, luxuriant, star-struck days filled with life and its sun-bright rays. Steamy hours so quickly flying. Can't use them all, but how I'm trying. Sorry.
You're good.
Parents and friends with good intention beg, slow down, but I just can't mention why summer's magic has its hold on me. I am too enveloped. I can't be set free. So while I'm both young and innocently aware, I will exist in summer and be safe in its care.
Beautiful. I'm crying with you, and I need a copy of that poem.
Okay, I'll get you one. One of these days, that's the one thing my mom always said. I want people to remember Deana. And so, when I finally decide to, we'll never say retire, but reposition from my career, I want to do something. I don't know whether it's writing. I'm not a great writer, what it is, but Deana affected a lot of people. And some of her friends still keep in touch with me. One of her best friends lives in New York City, and he went on to start the Sundance Channel with Robert Redford, and he was a high school friend, and we've kept in touch all these years. He said, we've got to do something to remember Deana. So
I
one of
think
these days.
I don't think there's a greater honor than remembering Deana.
Yeah.
We are getting towards the end here, but I have to ask you a really important question that everybody will want to know. Tell us about your thoughts about attending the execution of the criminal.
Good. That's something I will not cry about. So thank you for wrapping up with that kind of a question. People have asked me, how could you sit and watch a human being be put to death? And I basically respond, and it sounds cold, but it's the truth. Have you ever had to have one of your pets euthanized? Not much difference. This defendant showed no remorse during the short time that he was waiting for the execution to happen. He was rude to the practitioner in the room with him. Like I said, there was no remorse at all, and it was very hard for me to sit, from here to 15 feet from the window and watch this. At the time, I thought, how am I going to react? Do I want to go to this? I never had any question that I wanted to go. They offered to have other family members. My parents were gone. My husband's funeral had been 4 days before the execution. We had talked about that, and I did not want him to go because I was afraid he would go through the window. So what I felt after that short period of time when he was pronounced dead was I felt a lightness and I felt a relief.
Was that closure for you?
I hate that word. There is never closure. And this is, again, my opinion. Every victim is different. Every survivor is different. There's never closure because Deana's gone. What there is finality. I'm done with this. No more trials, no more hearings, no more wondering whether a technicality is going to make us start over. I'm done. And I feel much, much lighter and happier.
Leslie, thank you so very much for telling us your story and for being so open and forthright with us. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.